I'm Elise Caldwell, and I was halfway out the door of my tiny Boston apartment, juggling a coffee mug and a stack of blueprints, when my phone lit up on the counter. The screen flashed Mom and I froze. My mom Diane didn't call unless she wanted something, or something was seriously wrong. My thumb hovered over the decline button, a reflex born from years of keeping my distance. Growing up in a small coastal town in Maine, I was always the afterthought, the daughter who faded into the background while my younger sister Claire soaked up all the light. I'd moved to Boston to escape that shadow, building a life as an urban designer, reshaping neighborhoods to feel like home, something I never quite had. But that call, it was like a hook yanking me back. With a sigh, I answered. "Elise, you need to come home," my mom said, her voice sharp but shaky, like she was trying to hold it together. "It's your dad. He's not well." Miss Stomack twisted. My dad, George, had always been the quiet anchor in our stormy family, a retired fisherman, who loved me in his own understated way. But I hadn't seen him in years, not since I left to carve out my own space. "What's wrong with him?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. "It's serious," she said, dodging the question. "We need you here." Before I could press her, the line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, a flood of memories crashing over me. Growing up, I was the kid who organized the neighborhood cleanups while Claire painted murals that got her name in the local paper. My mom would beam at Claire's creativity while my efforts got a distracted nod. I learned early to rely on myself, pouring my heart into plans for better parks, better streets, anything to feel seen. Leaving for Boston was my way of starting fresh. But the ache of being overlooked never quite faded. Now standing in my apartment, I felt that old bitterness stirring. Why now? Why after all this time? The drive to Maine was a blur of winding roads and half-forgotten memories. The salty air hit me as I pulled into the driveway of our weathered seaside cottage, its faded shingles and sagging porch a mirror of my family's cracks. My mom stood at the door, arms crossed, her face a mask I couldn't read. "Elise," she said, her eyes flicking over me like she was sizing me. "Up common, we need to talk." Inside, the house smelled of sea salt and old pine, a scent that wrapped around me like a bittersweet hug. My dad was in the living room, frielier than I remembered, his fisherman's, hands trembling as he raked for me. "Elise," he said, his voice warm but weak. "I've missed you." I sat beside him, guilt gnawing at me for staying away so long. "Dad, what's going on?" I asked softly. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll talk after dinner." My mom cut in, her tone final. I nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken words settle over me. Dinner was a tense affair, the clink of silverware louder than our small talk. Claire's empty chair loomed large, her absence screaming louder than any words could. Was she avoiding me, or was something else brewing? As we cleared the plates, my mom ushered me into Theodon, closing the door with a soft click. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. I braced myself, my heart pounding. Whatever was coming, I knew it would crack my world open. The next morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls and the low murmur of voices drifting through the cottage's thin walls. My mom and Claire were in the kitchen, their words sharp and hushed like they were guarding a secret. "She doesn't deserve this," Claire hissed, her voice cutting through the morning quiet. Just stay calm, my mom replied, smooth as always. We'll handle Lee. She's not as tough as she thinks. My chest tightened. They were talking about me, plotting as if I were the enemy. I dressed quickly, my resolve hardening. Whatever they were scheming, I wasn't going to let them blindside me. I walked into the kitchen and the air shifted. Claire, impeccable in her artist's mock, gave me a tight smile, her eyes glinting with something sharp. My mom poured coffee, her movements too precise, like she was staging a performance. Morning, I said, keeping my voice even as I grabbed a mug. Morning, Claire replied, her tone clipped like she could barely stand to share the same air. We were just talking about Dad. My mom said, her eyes darting between us. Right, I said, stirring my coffee. What's going on with him? My mom cleared her throat. A signal. She was about to take charge. Your dad's made some changes to his will, she said, her voice measured. He wants to leave most of his savings to you. For fairness, of course. The words hit like a rogue wave. Fairness. I'd spent my life scraping for scraps of their attention while Claire got the spotlight. He's what? I said, my grip tightening on the mug. Claire leaned back, crossing her arms. You heard her, she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. Apparently you're the favorite now. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the small kitchen. Favorite? That's a new one. Growing up, I'd watched my mom frame CLA's sketches while my community projects went unnoticed. My dad tried to balance things, but his quiet support couldn't compete with their dynamic. Now, it didn't add up. Don't play innocent, Claire snapped, her eyes flashing. You've always had Dad wrapped around your finger. My mom stepped in, her voice as smooth as sea glass. We just want to make sure everything's handled properly, Elise. It's a lot to process. I nodded, my mind racing. This wasn't about fairness. It was about control. My dad's savings built from years of fishing and saving were a lifeline, and they wanted to dictate how it flowed. I'll talk to Dad, I said, setting my mug down with a thud. I want to hear it from him. As I turned to leave, Claire's voice stopped me. Just watch yourself, Elise, she said, a smirk playing on her lips. Things aren't always what they seem. It met her gaze, my heart pounding. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged, her smile sharp enough to cut. You'll find out. In the den, my dad sat surrounded by old fishing logs, his face lined with exhaustion, but brightening when he saw me. Elise, he said warmly. Gesturing to a chair, he sat, feeling the weight of the moment. Mom and Claire mentioned the will. I said, searching his eyes. He nodded, his expression heavy. I've made some choices, Elise. I want to make things right before I can. His voice cracked, and I saw the regret etched into his features. Why now? I asked, my voice soft but urgent. Because I've seen what silence does, he said, his eyes distant. I should have stood up for you more. This is my way of trying. As we talked, I felt a flicker of warmth like the first rays of sun after a storm. My dad's decision wasn't just about money. It was about acknowledging me, seeing the daughter who'd fought to make her mark. But Claire's warning lingered, a dark cloud on the horizon. It knew this was only the beginning, and whatever storm was coming, I had to be ready. The cottage felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with tension that prickled my skin. After my talk with my dad, I knew Claire, and my mom wouldn't let his decision slide. The family gathered in the living room, a forced meeting my mom orchestrated with her usual iron grip. Claire sat across from, her eyes fixed on the ocean outside, avoiding mine. My mom perched on a chair, her fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the armrest. My dad cleared his throat, his voice steadier than I expected. "Thank you for being here," he said, his hands trembling slightly. "I know this isn't easy, but it's important." I watched him, my heart aching at his frailty, but warmed by his resolve. My mom's face was a mask of calm, but I caught the tightness at her jaw, the way her eyes flicked to Claire for support. "I've decided to leave most of my savings to lease," my dad said, his words dropping like stones into still water. "She's worked hard, and she deserves this." Claire's reaction was instant, her face flushing as she shadowed her feet. "This is absurd," she snapped, her voice slicing through the room. "You're letting her manipulate you, Dad." Anger surged to my chest, but I bit it back. This was Claire's playbook. Accuse, deflect, and never own up. "Manipulate," I said, my voice steady, despite the heat rising in me. "I just got here, Claire." Her eyes blazed, but there was a flicker of desperation beneath. "You waltz in after years of ignoring us, and now you're the saint." My mom reached for Claire's arm, her touch calming but calculated. "Let's note-escalate," she said, her voice smooth as ever. "We all want what's best for the family." Before my dad could respond, the front door creaked open and Asher, Claire's husband, walked in. His presence shifted the room like a cold wind blowing through. A carpenter with a quiet strength, Asher had always seemed out of place in Claire's orbit, but I never figured out why. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice even, his eyes scanning the tension. Claire mentioned a family meeting. Claire's gaze flicked to him, a silent plea. But Asher's eyes met mine. A flicker of something. Sympathy, maybe passing between us. "Maybe we should all take a breath," Asher suggested, his tone deliberate like he was defusing a bomb. "No need to make rash decisions." His words eased the immediate heat, but I could feel the undercurrents still swirling. My mom and Claire weren't backing down, and Asher's arrival added a new layer to the drama. As we dispersed, the silence was heavy, like the calm before a nor'easter. I knew this was just a pause. The cracks in our family were widening, and I was standing on the fault line, bracing for what came next. The air in the cottage grew heavier after Asher's arrival, like Thesky before a storm. I felt watched, every move scrutinized as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Toe ground myself, I turned to the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, the steady rhythm a small anchor in the chaos. My mom slipped in, her footsteps soft on the worn floorboards. "Need help?" she asked, her voice too casual, like she was playing a part. I shook my head, keeping my eyes on the knife. "I've got it." She lingered, her presence a quiet pressure. "About your dad's decision," she said, her tone measured. "It's unexpected, but maybe it's for the best." I paused, the knife hovering. "For the best?" I said, turning to face her. "Or for your best?" Her eyes flickered, a crack in her composure. "We all want what's best for your dad," she said. But the words felt hollow, a script she'd rehearsed. "And for you and Claire." I pressed, my voice sharp. She She didn't answer, her silence louder than any words. Later, I retreated to my old bedroom, the walls, lined with faded sketches I'd drawn as a kid, dreams of city parks I'd never built. I needed space to think, to untangle the web of lies and loyalties. A soft knock broke my thoughts. Asher stood in the doorway, his carpenter's hands tucked into his pockets, his face serious. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, gesturing tow chair. "What's up?" He hesitated, choosing his words like he was navigating a minefield. "I've seen things with Claire," he said, leaning forward. "Things that aren't right. You need to be careful, Elise." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" He sighed, his eyes conflicted. "There's someone she's been seeing, Owen, a gallery owner, and there's money moving where it shouldn't." His words hit like a gust of wind, confirming the suspicions I'd buried. "Why are you telling Mathis?" I asked, searching his face. "Because I'm tired of the lies," he said, his voice low. "And I think you are too." He left me in the dim room, his warning echoing. The stakes were higher than I'd imagined, and the truth was closer and more dangerous than I'd thought. The next day, I met Phoebe Lewis, a private investigator I'd heard about, through a Boston colleague. We sat in a quiet cafe on the edge of town, away from prying eyes. Fee's sharp gaze missed nothing as she sipped her coffee. "I've been digging into Claire," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "She's been meeting Owen regularly, and there's money tied to him. Transfers from your dad's accounts." My heart sank. The betrayal cutting deeper than I'd expected. Claire wasn't just competing for attention. She was unraveling everything my dad had built. "What now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Fu's eyes met mine, resolute. "We exposed them. But it's going to get messy." The cottage was silent. The kind of quiet that hums with anticipation. Fu's evidence burned a hole in my bag, a folder filled with proof of Claire's affair and financial deceit. I stood in the living room, Asher by my side, his steady presence a quiet anchor. My mom and Claire walked in, their conversation dying as they saw us. Claire's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing across her face. "What's this about?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a jagged rock that I took a deep breath, my heart pounding but resolute. "We need to talk," I said, holding up the folder. "About the truth. You've been hiding." My mom's gaze flickered, a crack in her usual calm. "What are you talking about, Elise?" she asked, her voice tight. Asher stepped forward, his tone firm but calm. "We know about Owen, Claire. The affair, the money you've been moving, the color drained from Claire's face, her confidence crumbling." She looked to my mom, desperate for backup. But my mom's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of panic. "This is ridiculous," my mom said, her voice rising. "You're trying to destroy this family." I shook my head, feeling a surge of strength. "No, I'm trying to save it, but we can't move forward with lies." Claire's eyes blazed, but there was fear beneath the anger. "You think you can just swoop in and ruin everything?" She spat. I met her gaze, unflinching. "I think it's time for the truth, Claire. No more games." The room crackled with tension, every word a spark ready to ignite. Then Claire's bravado broke, her voice trembling. "Mom," I can't keep this up, she said, tears brimming. My mom's eyes widened, her control unraveling. Claire, don't. But Claire shook her head, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Elise. I got in too deep with Owen. I didn't know how to stop. The confession hung in the air, raw and heavy. My mom's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. The truth was out, and their carefully spun web was in tatters. The days that followed, the cottage felt different, like the air had cleared after a storm. My mom retreated, grappling with Harold and enabling Claire. Claire was quieter, her usual spark dimmed by guilt. I spent mornings in the garden, tending to my dad's old flower beds, the act of nurturing life, a reminder of my own resilience. One afternoon, Asher found me there, his presence steady as ever. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, a small smile breaking through. Better than I expected. It feels free. Sorting through my dad's things, I found a letter tucked inside an old fishing journal. His handwriting was shaky but familiar, each word heavy with love. I've seen our family fracture, he wrote, but I believe you can mend it, Elise. You've always been stronger than you know. I handed the letter to my mom and Claire, watching their faces soften as they read. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. A chance to rebuild on honest ground. With my dad's savings, I decided to fund a community art center in town. A place where kids like me could find their voice through creation. It was my way of honoring my dad's hope and my own journey from the shadows to the light. As I stood on the cottage porch watching the waves crash against the shore, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The storm had passed and I was ready for whatever came next. Tio. Everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal, truth, and redemption. If this story stirred something in you, hit that subscribe button and join us where every wave carries a tale of struggle, strength, and starting over. Keep building your own path, and I'll meet you by the sea.